Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Thursday Talks. We're delighted that today's talk will focus on the work of Aydinaneth Ortiz and will be a conversation between Aydin and Christina Fernandez. My name is Lindsay Hamill. I'm the Associate Director of Education here at UCR ARTS. And before the program begins, we at UCR ARTS would like to first respectfully acknowledge and recognize our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air, the Cahuilla, Gabrielino, Tongva, and Luiseño and Serrano peoples, and all of their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. Today, this meeting place is home to many Indigenous peoples from all over the world, including UCR faculty, students, and staff, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these homelands. So today's talk is the first in a series of talks around the exhibition Tierra Entre Medio, which is at the Culver Center of the Arts through April 2nd, 2023. Tierra is a multi-generational exhibition that foregrounds 4 Chicana photographers working in Southern California. It features new works by Christina Fernandez installed alongside works by Arlene Majerado, Lizette Olivas, and Aydinaneth Ortiz. Tierra Entre Medio is organized by UCR ARTS and is curated by Christina Fernandez with Joanna Szupinska, senior curator. The exhibition is organized in conjunction with Christina Fernandez Multiple Exposures, which is a major survey exhibition concurrently on view at the California Museum of Photography until February 5th, 2023. So I'll now turn it over to Joanna to introduce our guests. And before I do that, I do just want to mention, if you have any questions, please, we'll have time for that at the end. So please put that in the Q&A, and I'll turn it over to Joanna.
Thanks, Lindsay. Hello. It's my pleasure to introduce our guests today, 2 phenomenal photographers working in Southern California, Aydinaneth Ortiz and Christina Fernandez. They're both arts educators. Aydin is assistant professor of photography at Cypress College, and Christina is associate professor at Cerritos College in Norwalk. Aydin was actually a student of Christina's at Cerritos, and they've remained in conversation ever since. She even somewhat followed in Christina's footsteps. They both earned their BAs at UCLA and their MFAs at CalArts. In her work, Aydin examines the intersection of our SoCal urban environments with personal and political issues, including immigration, familial relationships, mental illness, and drug addiction. Thank you, Christina, for bringing this powerful work to our galleries. So welcome, both of you. I'm passing it on to Aydin now.
Hello, well, thank you for having me, and thank you all in Zoom land for joining us. Thank you, Christina, first of all. It feels like it's my mini survey because I do have quite a bit of work in the exhibition, so I'm happy to be able to share that with you all, and thank you for everyone at UCR Arts for having me as well and being great hosts. So should I get started on the PowerPoint? Yeah.
Sure. I'll reserve my questions for later. So yeah, go ahead and get started on talking about your work.
Okay, great. And if you feel free at any time, if you want to jump in and ask something, or if I go really quickly, I know we don't have too much time.
Tell you to slow down.
Yeah, yeah, that's
good.
I let my students tell me to do that, so why not you? All right, so again, my name is Aydinaneth Ortiz. I go by Aydin because it's such a, long, complicated name. So I'm originally from Long Beach, California. And like they mentioned earlier, I am Christina's former student. I've learned a lot from you, Christina, over the years, and I really appreciate it. And I also want to give a shout out to all the community college students. I know I made a difference in my education, and I guess I could talk about that more later. So let's see if this PowerPoint wants to work with me. I'm going to be in somewhat chronological order just because I feel it's fitting for my work to start from the beginning. Not that I didn't make any work before this, it just wasn't as good. So I have a book titled La Condición de la Familia that is really personal to me. So it's a photo book dealing with what inspired me to make it actually was the loss of my brother. So the book deals with losing my youngest sibling, and then it also deals with my other brother who has schizophrenia, right? He suffers from schizophrenia. So this is the cover of my book. So I'm allowing you to see enter my home. So this is the front door of my house. And I actually made this book while I was in undergrad, so it was my last year. And my brother passed away in the middle of the summer. So when I came back, I was taking a class with Catherine Opie, and I said, you know what, like, this is all I can think about. I need to do something, right? I didn't show it throughout the entire semester. It was me really just for myself. Like I couldn't think of anything else. It's a combination of images from my family archive, my personal archive. You know, as a photographer, we just take pictures of everything that happens to us, around us, whether it's with our cell phone or a digital camera. So most of the pictures that are in color are images that I already had or that I collected from, again, my family's archive. The images in black and white, not all of them, but the majority of them are when I knew I was making a book. And why did I go with black and white is because I have a love for the darkroom, right? And that's where it all started for me in photography. So I felt it was appropriate to do that. Here is an installation view you can see my book. I don't know if you can see my mouse hovering. The book is on this table here. So if you missed it, guess what? I'm not going to tell you what the book is about because you have to experience it in person. And this is why I don't share my book online, because it's so personal to me and it means so much to me that I really wish for people to experience in person. And the 3 images that you see here on the right are images that are actually included inside of the book. And so I know I'm skipping over that way too quickly, but this book really set the tone forward for the rest of my practice. So, you know, I come from a household where we don't talk about, or we didn't talk about at least, my brother, for example, being schizophrenic. And when my youngest sibling passed away, like there was no hiding that. And then I just felt like, well, let me make work about it. Let me deal with it. It was very therapeutic for me. And when I shared it, so it was like my final, like, here you go, it's what I did, you know, it felt very comforting, the responses that I received, but also just realizing that I wasn't alone in these issues that I was dealing with. And people came up to me, whether it was family members that they had that had mental illnesses or just drug addiction or loss, or they just felt comfortable talking to me and sharing with me. And then I didn't feel so alone. After I graduated, I started to work on this series titled California State Mental Hospitals. And it was me trying to figure out why my brother didn't get the support that I felt he deserved or should have received, because we weren't professionals. We didn't know how to help him. And he wasn't helped and I wanted to know why. So a lot of my practice has been through asking questions that I have, or being angry about something and then wanting to make work about that and showing it visually. So I did get access to one of these institutions, and I don't name them by name just because it doesn't matter what the name of the institution is. They're all the same. The problem is the same, and it's systematic throughout our country. I just so happen to have access to the ones that are near me in California. So I was allowed to be, or at least in the for this first set of images, allowed to shoot or take pictures of these buildings from inside, and I was able to see that they're falling apart, and I felt it's showing, it's speaking about how our system works. So what did I discover? I discovered that you can't just walk in there and say, hey, I need help, right? It's either your court order to be there, you're waiting to stand trial, or you're committed there by conservatorship. So this is why my brother didn't, I felt, get the support that he needed. Since I want to say I started this project, so I started this in 2014, and you know, as photographers, we tend to work on stuff for a very, very long time. He has been there, and I felt that it did help him to be there. He was only there for a few months. The time he was there, he was better, and I was able to talk to him like a regular person. But when he's released, the cycle is the same, and I guess I'll talk a little bit more about that. But so in the beginning, I'm taking pictures from the inside, and then I'm taking pictures from the outside. And as I start to I don't have access, I should say. I had access to the first institution because it wasn't, I guess they were low offenders. It wasn't as like high security. And it kind of shows in this image here where you have a watchtower, right? So it resembles more of a prison than it does like a mental institution, or what you would think a mental institution should look like. So I started to document the communities around it. And this one, which is really strange, there was like a park directly next to it. So this is like a tennis court, so people could come play tennis, and there in the background, you see this prison, right? Prison-like mental hospital. And the very first time I jumped through some hoops to be able to just document this. So I didn't know if I wanted to go in with black and white film or color film. I knew I wanted to do film, right? Because I like film, the quality of it, and it slows me down as a photographer, but I didn't know. And then, so I'm like, I'm going to do both. I took a medium format camera that allowed me to switch the backs from color and black and white. And I thought, why not? Why not keep both, right? And I feel that the black and white images do something very different than the color ones. The black and white, it takes us to, it makes us nostalgic for something, and the color it brings it to the contemporary and the today. So then again, being angry at my brother, I came with this series titled Ingredients, which it was me trying to figure out why he was attracted to crystal meth. So he self-medicates, and his drug of choice, his preference is crystal meth. So in researching the drug itself, I was reading all the ingredients and the labels that goes into this product, right? And I printed these larger than life. They're 40 by 50 inches so that you can see the labels, so that they're in your face. A lot of these are things that I had at home or my father had in his garage. So I easily had access to these materials. Maybe I think I bought one thing to photograph, and I just kind of wanted to point that out and put it in your face, because I was questioning, why would he want to ingest something that's flammable, right? And this series, so I really like the title of it too, because I feel like when people see ingredients, they normally don't see this line of products, and it makes them question what it is that they're looking at, and what type of ingredients, or what will it make. So people who know, and people who, this is usually the one that takes them there, that they with the meds. But I've had people like, is it gonna make a bomb? What's happening? Sorry, I'm scanning through them. And I purposely did it on a black backdrop. I wanted to take it a little bit away from commercial or product photography, even though that's what it is, right? But it's a heavy topic, and I didn't want it to be pristine and super clean. So these are them installed, and then right across from them, I ended up making an installation, and I felt that they fit very well together. So this I exhibited for my thesis show at CalArts, and I was thinking about an image in my book, and that image is actually printed pretty large, and it's on display at the museum currently, and it's a picture of my brother's bedroom, and it was during one of his episodes where he was just very manic, and then he just tore up the room and tagged all over the place. And I wanted the viewer to kind of step into that place. So it wasn't just about seeing a 2D image anymore. It was about entering my space, or a space that's familiar to me. And okay, so let me drink some water. Sorry if I sound sick or anything. Everybody's sick nowadays. Hija de tu madre, for those Spanish speakers, it's a double entendre. It's like saying a bad word without saying a bad word. Was inspired by all the negative comments that our 45th president was talking about migrant people, and I wanted to somehow combat that or show something different. So I decided to focus. It started with my mother, who is from Honduras, and as part of the series, I decided to focus on mothers and daughters to show a different light, thinking about the history of portraiture representation. And I decided to expand it. So the series is titled Hija de tu Madre, but each family is titled Hijas de, and then the mother's name. So this, for example, is Hijas de Ana. To the left is my older sister, The center is my mother, and then to the right is myself. And it's a really funny story. My mom actually helped take my self-portrait, and it's, if you've ever used a 4x5 camera, you know that it's not easy. So power to my mom for being able to help me do that. But along with the images, I also show a little bit about who they are, where they were born, and then when they came to the United States. And I've since grown the series and continue to grow the series. And then so here you see Hijas de Cecilia, Hijas de Consuelo, Hijas de Elsie, Hija de Teresa. And then this one here is when, so I've shown a lot of Latin American women, right, from Latin America, but we're not the only people who are migrants to this country. So I expanded the series to, and I asked a friend of mine if she would participate, and her mom does not speak Spanish, right? So we felt it was appropriate that we write the title in her native language. So it's in Korean. Again, just like the other sets, I also include where she was from and when she came to the United States. And for all of these portraits, I did not ask them to dress a certain way. I did not ask them to pose. I just wanted them to be comfortable around me, and they have invited me inside of their home. So I would go to them and take a photograph either in front of their homes or inside of their home. And but it's still very like close to home, close to my heart, very meaningful to me, the work that I have been doing. There was a moment in time where I just started to feel like the work was very heavy, and it took a toll on me, right? It helped me, but at the same time, it was very heavy to deal with. And this one here was actually inspired by a conversation with one of my mentors, Mario Barra Jr., and it's titled, "There's a Reason the Windshield is Bigger Than the Rearview Mirror." So me thinking about all the great things that had been happening in my life, I got this tenure track position at Cypress College. So shout out to all my students. And I just felt very lucky, you know, and I this is what I say, it's me saying goodbye to my sad girl work. Not that I'm not going to continue to make sad girl work, but I was just ready to look at what's ahead. But at the same time, I can't help but think about what's, you know, all the other things that worry me in my family. And so here I am looking back in the rearview mirror, and in this image, I'm looking ahead, because I can't help but to continue to do both. And this leads me to my newest series. So here it is at the gallery installed, and I really like these install images, they're really great. So in the LBC is my newest work. I just started it this year. So I am originally from Long Beach, like I mentioned earlier, and going to the beach is something that we regularly did. I love going to the beach. I learned how to swim in this ocean, right? I didn't have access to a pool. It was affordable for my mother and father. And we would go there all the time. And then sometimes I feel that Long Beach gets a bad rap as far as like, people don't want to go to Long Beach. That's not the destination. It's like, oh, it's dirty or whatever. But I started to think about why it is that the beach is this way, right? What systems are in place that this is what our beach looks like? And by our beach, I feel like it's the people's beach, right? Like the people who go there are people from the community and they love it, right? And we will go in the water, right? So I started to document people who go here and what the beach looks like. And you notice that there's a lot of, I say, just ships parked on our beach. And why is that, right? And we have a lot of, what are these things called? These like fake islands, right? To hide what's happening in front of us in our beach. So I'm just gonna scroll through some of these images. And I've also started to show or document the people, because I first sought out to do this project with a large format 8x10 camera, because I thought, or was encouraged also, that who has access to a camera like this? Not a lot of people from my community. And what would it be like if I document my community in such a great and large scale and print them large. But while I was there, it's not just about the beach itself, but it's also about the people. So then I went back and with my 4x5, because 8x10 was a little crazy, and started to document the people who also go to this beach. So it's a combination of landscape work and back to portraiture, because it's something that I love. And I decided to include the names of everyone who's a part of this series, and I will continue and wish to continue this work. Okay, that's all I got. I don't know if I went too fast, but maybe I should stop sharing now.
Well, thank you for that. You blew through that really quick.
You know, I told you I talk quickly.
So, so the first 3 series that you talked about, I'm really interested in how, what the evolution was of these different series, kind of being born from the event that you talked about, right, with your 2 brothers. So there's this event that happens, but also there's also, you know, I'm sure that his illness manifested earlier and also manifested later, right? So there's that, because it's not just one event, but the one event is so intense and tragic, right, that it becomes like this hub where all this different work starts coming from, right? Can you talk a little bit about the evolution? Like, I feel like the book is this intensely personal, very organic, but very beautiful manifestation of your brother's death, right? And it has your family members in it. There's a nod to Andy Warhol, you know, with the moving heads, a nod to Dwayne Michaels, I think, in this sort of blur motion stand-in for like time passage. So I can see where the book is sort of the starting point, but talk a little bit about what you were thinking with the ingredients and also the mental hospitals, which are much more, in a way, detached, I want to say. They're almost as if you're looking at them in a kind of forensic way. There's a typology happening, sort of a nod to the new topographics photographs. So talk a little bit about the evolution of those different facets of that event.
Yeah, so the book, again, I didn't plan on necessarily sharing it. It was just something that I felt it was necessary for myself, for my about just coping. I felt like I needed to work on it. So it was, yeah, of course, it was very, very personal. But then in sharing it is what I felt was kind of the most powerful thing, what happened afterward, right? Mm-hmm. So I remember the first time I shared publicly, outside of the classroom, because it was like, okay, here, you know, it was at UCLA, there was like a group show, and then someone left me a little heart on a sticky on the table, just next to it. And I just felt like, wow, this person felt so inclined to just leave me this little note with a heart, and to share that somehow it impacted them. And then I just felt like, well, if it's helping me, what is it doing being in conversation with other people? I've had people confess things to me and then later say, why did I just tell you that? and it's because I'm being so vulnerable and I'm sharing so much. So I then started to see that what felt like an issue that only happened to me and in my family was not an issue that only happens to me and my family. So then when approaching these other works, you can say that I made it a little bit more, I guess, wider in scope, so that other people can relate to it, because it's not just about my family, right? There's so many people who are dealing with addiction or have family members that have addiction. And in my mind, I just want to kind of shine light to things that I felt weren't being talked about in an art context. So now, and I think it's great that more and more people are making work about mental health and addiction and being more open about it. But there are certain things, at least in my mind or my community, that I felt like wasn't talked about. And I felt someone needed to talk about it or point it out or bring it to light. And when I was taking the images for ingredients, I am not by any means a studio photographer, but I'm like, it needs to be done in the studio. You know, I'm like, this is how it needs to look like. And it was just like a straightforward approach to it. So to highlight the text that's on these containers themselves, you know. And then the mental hospitals, I think just being inspired by the new topographics and seeing their work and enjoying that type of work, or just kind of like a straight photographer, and why I fell in love with photography is why I approach photographing the hospitals in this way, right? I've had people tell me like they're too pretty, and I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. You know, this is how I take pictures. But there's like more to it. It's like layered. And I think you just kind of have to take your time with it. They're also printed very small, so you might be seeing them bigger on your TV monitor or computer, whatever you're looking at us today, because they're really tiny. And that was very intentional, and that's because I want people to come close to them. I want the viewer to physically have to walk up close to them to see the details. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I want to go back to the images themselves. So, you know.
Okay. You want me to share that?
Oh. No. I think, yeah, the mental hospitals in particular, you know, because I'm a photographer too. So my interest in them is from like a photographic standpoint, you know. So the mental hospitals in particular are so interesting to look at, right? Like some of them look like 60s ranch style homes. Some of them look like full on prison institutions. And this movement like closer and farther away is really interesting too. You know, never from the inside looking out, right? Always from the outside, but on the outside at different distances, right? And, you know, I wonder how that operates in the series. Like, do you get, you know, people asking you details about, you know, well, why didn't you get closer on this one? Why couldn't you get into the you know, the more high security institution? Because I feel like people get very, what's the word? They get very distracted by the adventure that, you know, photographers have to undertake to get their work done. But I think visually it works because it does pull us in and forces us out. And I feel like that's the kind of like, it mimics the relationship we have with our people in our family that do have mental health issues. I just wondered if that was something, or if I'm reading too much into that.
No, I mean, part of it is just the access that I had. So the first institution that I was able to actually enter, I was able to go in multiple times, and it's really large, right? They have these little homes that used to be for the physicians there, for the doctors there, and then so that's why they had like little homes. And then, but when they lost the funding, when the funding was no longer there, they just had to shut them down. And so let's say only 20% of the whole hospital is currently in use. 80% of it is just abandoned buildings. They had like different services. They had like a youth center and things like that. So I wasn't allowed to go inside of the buildings themselves. And at first it was like, they thought I was gonna be like a whole production. They were trying to charge me. And it's like, no, it's just me and my camera. That's it. You know, I'm not, you know, filming the movie or nothing. So I was very fortunate to be able to have access to go inside to begin with, right? And I was able to return at least 2 additional times. So I was able to spend more time there, where I guess I should try to go back and be more persistent and kind of like, come on, let me in. But I realized it's just because it was like a max security and
I don't think that's necessary. You're not,
yeah.
you're not a photojournalist. You're coming from the standpoint of a person who's looking onto this problem from the outside. In a lot of ways, it was within your family, but you don't have these mental health issues. So you're looking from this certain vantage point. And I think that if you were to move inside the buildings and photograph maybe inmates or photograph from inside, you know, there's a kind of a lie that happens with that, I think. And so, because our view is from the outside, we are outside of this problem, not all of us,
Right.
but you know, a lot of us are outside the problem. And I feel like that is such a more honest way of looking at those buildings. I mean, and then you get to question, why are they closed, and when did they close, and for what reason, and who was responsible for this? You know, the viewer has to do a little participation. If you give them too much, then they see the image and they move on.
Right.
You know, so at least that's how I'm thinking of it. But yeah, I'm really impressed. I've always been impressed by the way that you handle just the photographing of all these different architectural spaces, right? Because we know how to photograph the fronts of houses and things like that. And there's like this beautiful, like, you know, cypress trees that have been shaped and all of that. But the institutional places, that's much, much harder, because you're at a distance and things are in the way. And somehow you manage to give a view onto, you know, this facility through the dry brush, through the chain link fences. And this is how we see these places. They're almost like a mystery to us, right? And,
Yeah,
and in a lot of ways, we want them to be a mystery to us. We don't.
absolutely. And I always found it, so these are, I've what's at display currently at the museum is 3 different institutions, and then you get to see how they've changed, right? Like that watchtower, that was, to me, this is not a hospital, this is a prison, right? And that's actually the location that my brother was hospitalized in for a few months, and it really did change him while he was there. But he is someone who cannot help himself, and therefore he needs that constant daily support. And I wish to continue the series. I have 2 other hospitals up north that I have not made my way yet, because I feel like, again, it's a systematic issue. It continues to happen, and I am photographing it. I'm trying to describe a place, right? And how can I describe this place to the viewer? And sometimes it's, you know, from inside, sometimes it's from the outside. And how can I show the environment in which it also neighbors, and it exists in? So yeah, thank you, Christina.
You're welcome. A couple of other questions. Let's see what I have here. So I've been very, very interested, because I see that, you know, when you embark on a new series, it's not the same as the last. You always approach something very differently in accordance with where you're at in your life, but also, I think, with the subject matter. So I'm really interested in what your influences have been, either, you know, other photographers. What were you looking at, say, when you went to CalArts, or what were you looking at when you started, you know, the ingredient series? I don't know. I'm just wondering if you were looking at other photographers, and if you have some influences that you can speak to.
Well, the first, I think, starting with the book, I was really looking at Nan Golden, and because I felt that her work came from a very personal place. And I was also, I want to say, as a young artist, right, just kind of amazed of what the things that she was able to share that was very personal to her and her friends and her community. And then sometimes I think it's interesting, because when I have students like, can I make work about this? And I'm like, have you seen other artists? Have you seen Robert Mapplethorpe? Come on, this is nothing, you know? So but that's kind of like where I was, right, as a young artist. And then, so her work was really instrumental when I was making my book and thinking about sequencing and putting it together. And you know, it is just a photo book. There's really no text in it, and it's not in chronological order. Is what I felt made more sense to the sequencing of, as if you were visually reading it, right? And then, so yes, I have been inspired by the new topographic photographers and the way that they work. Also August Sanders and thinking about portraiture And
I definitely say yes. Okay, now
yeah,
that you said that, I definitely
yeah,
see that for sure. Yeah.
yeah. And thinking about also like with large format photography, so the artist that comes to mind is Tina Lawson, and which I think is great, but there's like not that many of us, right, who have, by us I mean people of color, that have access to this format and printing in large scale. So those are a few. Who else? I just like to look at images, and then I don't know what it is. It's just like, this is how it needs to be done. This is how you do it. Let's go. Let's do it. Starts with the idea, and I just go for it. And not everything is great. Not everything you do is I want to show.
Yeah.
But definitely these are the ones that I felt that were more impactful to me. And when it means something to me, I think the care that goes into it really, I guess, shows and carries later.
I mean, once somebody learns how to use a 4x5 camera, they tend to continue to use it over and over and over again, because, well, it took so long to learn how to operate that camera. And I see you kind of pushing and pulling and going back and forth and learning, unafraid to learn, new things to deliver the message that you need to for that particular series. And I think that's a really, admirable thing. I think it's a really good thing and a good way to be a good teacher as well, because you have so much under your belt in terms of your photographic skills and how to use them effectively in terms of the delivery of a message that you want to communicate.
And the reason that I really, and I guess I'm persistent with film, is because it really does slow me down. Like, I've caught myself with a digital camera, like taking pictures as I'm walking. And then it's like, when are you, like, that's not going to make a good image, it's going to be okay. So I like that process. And the darkroom is why I fell in love with photography. So I, at first, was making work or just trying to forget about the problems at home. So my brother who was diagnosed with schizophrenia at 17, is 4 years younger than me. So I was very young as well. Yeah. And so he actually had it in his genes, but he sped up the process because he was using drugs. And I used the darkroom as a way of escaping the problems at home, right? So then it only feels fitting to continue to make my work in black and white and praying it or in the darkroom when I have the chance. But with color, something else happens. It's also beautiful and in its own way, and that's why I've started to make more work in color recently. It's expensive though, but it's okay, right? I'm lucky right now. I'm in a good place, but yeah, it's really because of the process. I really truly love the process.
The other question I had was about the Long Beach. What is that series called again?
In the LBC. So it's actually like LBC. It's a little clip of a song. So yeah.
Yeah. Well. We know the song.
Yeah. Now you can sing it in your head, right? So I was just, thinking about again.
Yeah, wait, slow down. Talk about how large these things are so that we can give people an impression, if they haven't gone to the show yet, of the scale of those pieces.
They're 48 by 60 inches. So they're very, very large, and I feel like they're bigger now. But so I did want them to take up space, and I actually thought it was really, but there's so much great work and large work in the exhibition, and that's why I feel like they could be bigger, because I'm like, wow, everything's so big and beautiful in here, I just want to share like a cute thing that happened. So my dad said that when he walked into the gallery space, he kind of saw it in the corner of one of my pieces on the corner of his eye, and then he's like, I couldn't make the round fast enough to get to the work, and then he's like, when I got there, I saw it was yours, and I was just like, wow,
Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
Out of everything, that's gonna make me cry for real. But it was just like, it's for people, like he is my audience, Whoa, hold on, I was not ready for that.
while you're doing that, you want to put up one of the images up so we can
sure.
like look at it and talk about it? Just anyone. I like the jungle gym one the most, but
yeah. So the that is here. Give me a second.
there's something about the jungle gym one. It's yeah, that one.
Yeah, and then because I'm using a large format camera, you know, the exposures are a lot longer, so therefore you get a little bit of this blur motion. So I really love the motion in it. And I'm also very particular about the time of day that I shoot anything. And I'm just like, no, you gotta get the right light, you know. And so I'm thinking about it, and I want to frame it, I want to frame it in a way that is beautiful, but at the same time, it's showing you all the depth and what's happening behind it. And you can see, like, again, all these boats and oil rigs, and then they're not all this beautiful. Like, you have this one here where there's like a trash can, and then there's trash on the beach, and thinking about why that is and what's happening and why people don't want to go in this water. And so there's a breakwater off the coast that's preventing like water circulation, and thinking about why that's there and how that's impacting the environment, right? I went to Bolsa Chica Beach, and I was actually mad about how pretty it was. I was like, what? Why this is not that far away from Long Beach, you know? And so there's something to say, you know, about that. And they won't change it, they won't get rid of it, because economically it doesn't benefit them, you know, and who does it benefit, right? But again, as I'm, you know, doing this series and taking images of this beach, I got to see the beauty and why I loved going as a child, why I liked going when I was young, and why my parents went, why my parents took me. People from this community love it, they still enjoy it, they have fun. There are, you know, sometimes they're you know, they're just hanging out. I think this was on a Wednesday, you know. That's why it's like, for being during the week, you know, it's hot, and people don't sometimes have AC at home, and the freshest place to go is go to the beach.
For, you know, for people of color, this is so quintessentially SoCal. You know, this is the image of the beach, you know, not the, you know, glorious waves and the, you know, the cliffs of let's say what's that beach, is it Conquistador, or I forget what that beach in Malibu is, where everybody goes to photograph, right, with all the crevices and beautiful rocks and stuff. You know, this is like our beach. It's just down the street from us, and there are moments of beauty for sure, and I think you've really captured that. The color palette is so wistful, you know, it's so, you know, and the blur motion, but then, you know, you're not hiding the, you know, the containers in the distance, you know, this is a working harbor, you know.
Right. And then, you know,
but also it's a source of income for us, right? You know, the harbor is a place where a lot of people, even a lot of our students' families, work there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I know that also, I think there's like Navy ships, and then they're saying, oh no, if the waters, you know, are not as steady, then we're going to have some problems. And it's a lot of complicated issues that like go with it, right? So I just, you know, was thinking about, you know, there's a cruise ship here, and you don't see that at Bolsa Chica, or I don't believe it. And I know, you know, the port is there, it's easier, but it did get a little bit more backed up during COVID time. So this was actually this year. So last year it was even, and the year before that it was even crazier.
Yeah.
But this is still something that you do see regularly off of our shore. But yeah, I'm just, you know, going to continue to document the beach. This is my new work, and I am excited for what's to come, you know, and I'm going to continue to make more of it. And this one here actually kind of reminded me of Laura Aguilar's rocks a little bit, even though it's not the same thing. There's it's just the large stones that are present in her work. yeah, so just different artists, different things.
Yeah, this is a beautiful portrait. Yeah. Do you just walk up to people and
yeah, and you know, it's hard to do with the 4x5. Like,
yeah.
as far as like in this, I need to get an easier tripod, but you know, just setting it up and like, give me a second, you know, and then just focusing. And I haven't figured out how to make it speedier, but they're very patient with me. And then I just tell them why I'm doing these things. And I'm making it a point this time to actually get their names, where in the past I have made portraits. I didn't include it in the PowerPoint today, but made portraits of people within my immediate community or just in North Long Beach. But I'm like, there's something about adding their name
Sure,
to
yeah.
the work. And so I'm also taking the time to take their name down, and I need to be better at like sharing my business card or something, like, here,
yeah, give them a print for sure.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to give them a print. And everyone's like super friendly, and they've been patient with me. Sometimes they want to move, and sometimes it's fun to also show them or their friends on the other side of the camera, and then they're like, wait, it's upside down, you know. And so that's it's been a really fun experience. And you know, like this guy, he was actually, his door was closed. He's like, can I open my door? And he totally just like posed and stuff. And I was like, yeah, dude, whatever you want, dude. He's like, I'm gonna take off my shirt. Go ahead, yeah, take off your shirt. It's fine.
He's got a Playboy bunny on his
head. That's he knew what he was doing. He was like, this is my moment, you know. So I do want to share like these images with them. So and then sometimes I have the opportunity to take multiple images, or sometimes it's just one, and that's it. This is, they're also offering me their time, you know. So it's really great, and I feel fortunate that they do allow me to capture their image.
Oh, this is so adorable. Oh my gosh, look at this.
Yeah.
This little boy, he's just like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is this a whole family?
Yeah, so they're well, I think they're cousins or siblings. Their parents were like, oh yeah, just take a picture of the kids, and I was like, sure, if you want me to take a picture of your kids, that's fine, you know.
Well, it does take a special talent to be able to do that. You know, not everybody will let just anybody take photographs of their children randomly on the beach, you know. So it has something to do with the way that you approach them, your personality, that makes them at ease. And I think a lot of photographers, you know, have a harder time doing that. I wouldn't even think of doing that personally.
I had practice. I you know, the first time I actually started to take pictures in Tijuana, and that made me, I guess, not afraid, because it's easier when you have like, you know, a 35mm camera,
yeah,
even a medium format camera, because it's a lot faster. But it just, you know, I felt more comfortable just asking. So should we go to the Q&A?
Yeah.
or yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much all. That was actually my last question. So we can take some questions from the audience.
Yeah, so thank you for a great talk. We'll start reading some of these questions. I want to reiterate, I've had a couple questions. So the chat is disabled. Where you can add a question is in a feature called Q&A. So I see a few questions coming in, and as you take a moment to write your comment or question, I'll be greedy and ask my question. So Heidi, you know, I have a question about scale and intimacy. I'm thinking of, you know, the mental hospitals are very small. You print them small. It makes you come in, look closely. I have the same experience with the book. The Long Beach photographs, that you print them very large, but you know, with that 4x5 detail that also really draws in the viewer, and you can see all the detail and look very closely. So I'd like you to reflect a little more about scale and how you make these choices for each. You know, my personal experience is that it's one of intimacy is what I get out of, you know, your large and small work. But could you say a little more about that as we wait for to accumulate just a couple more questions here?
Yeah, I feel that for the hospitals, I wanted the viewer to get close to it, and I wanted them to really have to come in to see it, and not just at a glance, right? You see people walking into the gallery space and they feel that they take up the whole image, maybe, 5 feet away, and then they just walk away. And then I feel that because you have to physically move closer to it, you get to, I don't want, not appreciate it more, but really take it in. And for the large images, I was really thinking about, I guess, access to and or who has access to be able to print so large or use an 8x10 film camera, which is another beast of its own. And the artists that come to mind are white male photographers, right? And I wanted to kind of push against that, right? And so I wanted to print them big. I wanted for it to take a lot of space for people in my community to take space in this way. But I don't know if I was thinking about intimacy. I see it though, I agree. But these are the things that I was thinking.
All right, and we have some questions from the chat, so I wanted to pop back in and read those. The first one is from Arlene Maharado, who is another artist in the show. And she asked, your work on Long Beach is really beautiful. The landscapes are stunning. How did you approach what to frame and focus on when the scale of possibilities is so vast? Were you thinking about a selection process, or were you working more intuitively?
A little bit of both. I mean, I kind of knew location-wise, like the one in Signal Hill, like I knew it was a very specific location. But once I drove to that site, I then kind of decided, okay, this is the view that I want. When working in the beach itself, like, I don't know if you people understand how much equipment is involved with the 8x10, but my partner and I literally, or he did most of the work, rigged like a bicycle to have a cart so we could lug everything with us, so we can actually drive on the bike, so we didn't have to carry everything. The tripod itself, I want to say, is like 15 pounds. The camera is like another 20. So it did limit me because of the camera or the equipment, how heavy it was. But I kind of had an idea, so I started from there, and then I just rode on the bike or walked a bit, and then but I'm familiar with all of these locations. So like I said, I've gone to this beach multiple times as a young adult or child, and even now. So yeah, combo.
The next is a comment from Anna Benavides, but I'm going to read it because maybe you want to expound on it a bit. It's amazing the power of communication these images can provide. These photos can teach me more than 1,000 words about the mental diseases or the people here. So she's congratulating you, and I wonder if you wanted to say something about language versus images.
Thank you. And well, my first language is Spanish, so I always like to say they took away my Spanish and taught me shitty English. So I'm not a writer. And my language is through images. I do like to kind of play with naming my titles, having my titles be in Spanish. But even now my Spanish isn't that great, right? So I have a relationship with English and Spanish differently. But I feel that I speak stronger within my work, or just visually showing things visually. I'm a visual learner also.
Great, thank you. And Susan Laxton asked, would you say a few words about how this work relates to the exhibition title, Tierra Entre Medio? And that means the land between, in English, right? That was my add-on, because I don't speak Spanish.
Well, I didn't title the exhibition. I love the title though. I think it's great. Tierra Entre Medio. So the land in between. I feel I have to think about that one a little bit. I think it's just showing you maybe a space that doesn't get shown normally, right?
Well, we were trying to come up with a title for, you know, all four of our works. I mean, you know, I'm in the show, you're in the show, Arlene's in the show, and Lizette is in the show. So this is a broad range of work, and we're trying to come up with a title that fits all of those different practices and all those different series. And so, yes, literally, it means the land in between. And, you know, I like to think about it in terms of the concept of Nepantla, which is like a Chicano concept of being in between there and here on the borderlands, right? So I think of the title in those terms, like, because it could be figuratively or it could be literally in the borderlands, right? And so what we're talking about, I think, is this idea of, for instance, the mental health hospitals that you have in the show. They're definitely on the borderlands, right? Those are places that people that cannot function in regular society have to go, or they used to go there, right? And these places are obscured from our view, right? They're not present in our normal everyday life. So in that way, it sort of literally, but also figuratively talks about the land in between. But I think I go back to that concept of Nepantla and just being on the border and not being this or that or being both, right? In terms of our identity. So that would be my answer to that.
We have another question from Arlene Mejorado, another artist in the show. She writes, I appreciate how you also bridge access for families and children to experience being sitters for large format camera image making. What was your relationship to images growing up? How would you describe your introduction to photography outside of schools and institutions?
I was given by my parents a small little, I want to say like toy, like 35mm camera, and I used to take a lot of photos because I thought it was fun, and I was very fortunate that my mom would buy me film and get it developed for me. But I didn't truly understand or embrace the art until I was older, because we live with our art. Our art is different in our homes, right? But being of the generation where there's so many images around us, and we take, I feel, photography for granted, and it's not really understood or appreciated until you truly study it or just see more of it. So for me, the photography was just the family album, and that toy camera meant so much to me later on, even when it didn't work. And I had my nephew trying to take it away from me, and I cried because I'm like, no, it's mine, my first camera. But yeah, thank you, Arlene, for the question. I don't know if I answered it, but I think so.
That's great. We have another question from, I believe, one of your students, Heidi. So she said, she was saying that it's such a blessing to be your student. She's so proud of you, and she looks forward to learning from you every day. And she asked, La Condición de la Familia, for your work for that series, do you mind sharing what your family thought about your work and how much it has helped them and you to cope?
Well, that's a good question, Ruby. Thank you. So La Condición de la Familia, I titled it that, is kind of thinking, you talked about, Christina, the images with the multiple exposure and the faces, was the first work that I told about La Condición de la Familia. So I actually printed those in the darkroom, and then I felt it was fitting that they go in the book, and then I gave the book that title, which it's like the condition of the family. So I felt we all shared his condition because we lived together. We lived with my brother with schizophrenia, and I wanted to somehow show that. Like, how can I show that? So when I made the book, of course, everybody cried. right? And then I ended up going to therapy while I was in school. Actually, Catherine Opie recommended. She's like, "This is great. Work on this book, but go to therapy too." And I'm like, "That I never even thought about that. That's a good idea, you know." And I even showed my therapist, and she was just like, "Wow, this is great." But they, I think, thought it was powerful, but the impact on them wasn't the same impact I feel, at least, that it was on me. And for me, I was constantly every day dealing with these images, thinking about making a book. So I was able to cope a lot faster. I was able to talk about what happened a lot faster because I was crying about it. Like, instead of, there's different stages of grief, and one of the stages is to just kind of ignore it and try not to talk about it. So I was confronting it daily, and then I tried showing it to my brother Israel, and he just wasn't in a mental state where he even really thought about it. So now I feel that my family, I should say, have always been great supporters of what I do, and I've been very fortunate. And I think slowly they've come to understand the arts, or myself, a bit more, just coming with me and coming to my shows and talking to people. So it's really great to see them navigate these spaces that they never would have been in otherwise. But I think it's made a lot of people cry. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think that is all of the questions, but
I do have one more comment from Sally Stein, and I've just remembered that there's a way to ask our participants to speak if they'd like to add something themselves. So I don't know, Sally, if you would like to add something about your interpretation of the title, because I'm reading your comment. It says, I maybe misinterpreted the title in a punning fashion to also refer to the between of mediation. So if that's something Christina or Heidi you'd like to reflect on, or Sally, feel free to jump in as well.
I just want to jump in and say this was such a great conversation, and I hope it becomes available to many more people.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. We're recording it and we'll share it. And I agree. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you to you both so much. Thank you, Heidi, for sharing your work. It's so powerful and so important to talk about these issues. And thank you, Christina, for organizing this exhibition. I hope everyone will come see it on view at the Culver Center. The upcoming scheduled talks are Christina in conversation with Arlene Mejerado on November 17th, and with Lizette Olivas on January 19th. And then finally, we'll focus on Christina's work for the talk on February 16th, where she'll be in conversation with Chan Noriego, a distinguished professor of film and television and digital media at UCLA, and who is also the curatorial advisor for the survey exhibition, Christina Fernandez, Multiple Exposures. Again, thank you so much. And everyone have a great evening.
Thank you.